Hey, my name's ShawNshawN. I do art on ShawNshawN.co and specials on eBay. Today we're going to review The Curse of La Llorona. So this is a film by Michael Chavez. It has actors Linda Cardellini as Anna, the mother of her kids. Roman Kristoff is her son. Janie Lynn Kitchen is her daughter. And Raymond Cruz is kind of this curador, so he's kind of a priest that became more of an Indian style witch doctor per se. So the story kind of introduces the original myth of La Llorona, about this beautiful woman who murders her own kids, and you're like, why does she murder her own kids? And the nice thing is they don't tell you till later why she killed her kids, so you just think, man, this is messed up. But then you kind of realize, oh, there was a reason for it. But they tell you they maybe should have showed the scene where she catches her husband having an affair with this younger woman. That would have been great. Like maybe she walks in on him or something. That would have gave more power to La Llorona and why she's so bitter. Chooses to kill her kids, right? They tell you, but they don't show it. Obviously it's filmed, so you want to show it versus tell it if you can. This probably would have added 2-3 minutes. Maybe they could edit out something, but it's only an hour and a half, so they're right in the level where I think the timing's really good. So 5 more minutes of film, I think it wouldn't have killed it. One of the nice things is, so the story is, so that's this 1623. They fast forward to, I think it's like the 1970s or early 80s, but more like the 70s, because they still have the rotary phones and the police with a really slow moving siren, which is really nice because that's much more creepier the way the old 60s cop cars work versus kind of the 80s, 90s where they're whoop whoop, and all that kind of, it doesn't have that creepy sense, but the old one, it has a more creepier kind of Halloween feel, so it's, it's a nicer image, I think, especially the lack of disconnect because there's no iPhones, right? So you can't reach out for help right away, which probably freaks out the millennials. So the millennials are like, oh my God, there's no iPhone, how do I get help? Just that in its sense would be creepy. There's this kind of use of color grading, which is really nice, which you do see this in better horror films, I think. So it has kind of this eerie green cast when La Llorona is close. So it's kind of nice because when it's daylight, normal day of time, it's kind of the normal blue, orange kind of Hollywood films, where a lot of Hollywood films that use that. And then when you get to like La Llorona's hunting you, then it's this green overcast. So you get a feel right away visually that something's astray. You connect it with La Llorona. So good symbolism with color, which a lot of films don't use as much, and it's really kind of a missing thing. They always color grade a film, but they don't always have this contrasting color grade. They did it also, this kind of a ripoff of Matrix. Matrix uses this very successfully, where green is in the Matrix and then they've kind of faded out colors with reality, I think, from what I remember. The timing's great. It's 93 minutes, not too long, just enough time to get the story over and done. One of the really nice impacts is they speak Spanish in here, so you have all the parts where you kind of don't know what's happening. They speak in Spanish. So the first mother that loses her kids and she's accused of killing her kids, she's actually accusing her in Spanish, and she doesn't. Now the social worker's like, I don't know what's going on, and so you have this nice, they don't translate everything kind of feel. So it heightens up the weirdness and the creepiness factor. Also, when the priest speaks, he's using Latin or Spanish, and this also heightens up the drama for an English-only speaking crowd, or one language is probably how they would show this in other countries. So it has a really nice feel to it. Now, since I speak Spanish, it's just not as creepy because I understand exactly every word they say, and it's very clear Spanish. It's not anything hard to understand. So for me, it wasn't that scary for that aspect, but I think if you don't speak the language, that would have kind of a heightened feel. So that's pretty nicely done. They have a flashback to to show you that it's connected to Annabelle, but I don't know if that's really necessary. I'd almost cut that part out because it doesn't have that much to, they have the same character, but I think I would have changed it out a little bit. So some of the changes I would have made in the film is, so one scene, the family kind of runs away to the Catholic priest and asks for help, right? I think if you would have had somehow the ghost haunt the priest himself, that would have been really vicious, because then it would be really creepy, like there's no way to stop this ghost, right? And they have this kind of contrast between the Catholic priest and this other guy who becomes a curandero, which is a traditional kind of witch doctor for Mexico, which would have been the Aztec Mayan culture. So that's kind of a really interesting twist. Like they're closer to the mythology of La Llorona, which would make sense. They're Mexican versus, the Catholic is kind of a Spanish imposed things on Mexican culture. You know, some of the better scary scenes they actually show in the marketing. Like they have a really nice bathroom scene, and it's like, it's kind of a shame that they put that into the marketing, because that would have been a really great creepy scene. But they do have to put something to kind of get people interested to go, so I understood why they use it, but it's kind of a shame to know that right out the bat you'd almost don't want to see anything. I think one of the things that kind of didn't make it for me was the first set of kids. You know, they were locked in the closet. You're like, oh my god, it's totally crazy, right? And they had that kind of traumatized look, so it looked really authentic. In the second set of kids, you know, they go from normal kids and they start getting, you know, haunted. I don't know if they get across the trauma so much. They get up to the point where, you know, they're just kind of getting into it, but they would be, you know, as the ghost attacks them, they'd be more and more traumatized. And I think they could have gone a little more deeper in there, a little bit more scarring kind of feel for the kids. It's, you know, it's a challenge. You're working with kids, so they only can do so much, but, you know, without actually really traumatizing them, right? Like if you look at The Shining, for example, when they filmed that, the director and Jack Nicholson actually traumatized the wife, Wendy, by yelling and screaming at her all the time, so she was physically, mentally traumatized. Well, more mentally than, but she was mentally traumatized, and you can't do that with a kid, right? So that's probably a limitation of working with kid actors. You can't really traumatize them. Like if you look at, like way back in the 20s or so, they didn't have these laws set up to protect kids yet, and you kind of have more of that, like you see what Shirley Temple went through. I mean, they sent her to school, but she was just on par all the time. So this really had a really strong impact, and I don't think, you know, a lot of kids films, it doesn't have a strong impact because I think they're more in school versus acting, and you really need to be in the groove. Like if you look at, say, Samuel L. Jackson, he's always filming, and his parts come off really strong because of that. And same with kid actors, you have to be acting. And, you know, since they have so many breaks with school, they kind of like get rusty, come back, get primed, get rusty, come back. You just have a weaker set of kids. I don't think these kids are bad as actors. I just think it could have been a little more traumatized. I think, too, for the mother, I would have probably showed her as she gets stressed going from this protector social worker to being accused of maybe abusing her kids, like the first woman was. Maybe she picks up smoking or something, where she starts to, you know, flip back into bad old habits. And she has a husband who's died, and they kind of revert to that, but they don't show, like, she's not religious, her husband was. I think they just could have picked up on that a little bit more as far as the religious part, because that's what makes it kind of scary. Yeah, and I would have shown also, since she's accused of abusing her kids, like the first one was, I would show her maybe possibly losing her job, she's on suspension, kind of, you know, really heighten that up. And they kind of were going that direction, but they don't get all the way there, right? So I think that would have been a little more like character evolution, like, man, I just got off by the skin of my teeth, lost my job, but, you know, I saved my kids kind of thing. I think that would have been a longer, stronger thing. And the priest just makes holy water right off the bat, which a priest can do, but it would have been cooler, like he had to actually go to some special church and scoop the water out or something. That would have been kind of cooler, I think. But it's, you know, it's magical holy water, right? If you're atheist like me, it doesn't make any sense anyway. But it's just, yeah, I think they got a pretty good across with some of the medicine. You know, pretty good scares. I don't think I was that scared. I think I'm just older, so it's just not that scary anymore. But I think it was a pretty good film. It wasn't as scary as, say, what was that, Quiet Place? That was really great with the really ratcheting up of the sound quality. Went lower to complete silence. And this film does that a little bit. You know, they realized, like, taking out the music completely sometimes is even creepier, so they try to add that element, but I think it's just not as strong. I think it's just because it's a rework of the same plot, so eventually you kind of get tired of these films and you kind of know where they're going. So I mean, if you were a teenager seeing this, I think it would be scary if you hadn't seen anything, but if you've seen these kind of films a lot, it's not going to be, not bad, but it's just not going to, you know, ring as scary. Maybe just horror films aren't my thing anymore. I used to love them as a kid. Anyway, that's my take. Hopefully you guys like my review. If you want to subscribe, so you can subscribe below. And I'll see you in the next movie review. Thanks for watching, guys.